Hey everybody, welcome to Local Business Hacks Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Case, and I'm on a mission to help you. Every week, we're going to be talking to local business owners and experts to get their best tips, tricks, and hacks to grow your business. This show is designed to teach you, inspire you, and motivate you to take massive action and start to build your future-proof business. Whether you're just starting off or you're taking your existing business to the next level, this episode is for you. So let's get started. Hey, local business hackers. I am your host, Global Director of Business Development for Referrizer, joined today by the one and only president of the DRIPBaR, Kory Angelin. Kory, welcome to Local Business Hacks.
Carl, can I take you around with me to be my introduction guy? That was phenomenal. My wife doesn't introduce me as well.
I'm here to support you however I can.
I love it.
Kory, so obviously you don't become the president of a multi-location growing franchise overnight. Talk to me about this journey that's got and your brand to this point.
Man, it started like many people in the fitness industry, specifically in big box, right? I always tell people, if you ever want to learn the business of fitness, work at a Lifetime. Carl, you ever go to a Lifetime to work out?
I have. And funny enough, the Lifetime in Boca Raton is the smallest, oldest Lifetime that is the most expensive because of the area.
Absolutely. Yes. Isn't it the old, I think it's an airplane hangar, if memory serves me correct. It's been a long time since I've been with them, but I started with them in 2009, I think. And I opened up the first ever one in New York, Long Island, which is where I'm from. And I really never heard of it. Funny enough, I used to train an NFL quarterback, Vinny Testaverde. I'm dating myself. And at that point, most people know him with the Jets, but he was with the Cowboys at the time. And I'm a big Cowboy fan. And he's like, Kory, I work out here at Lifetime. I'm like, what is that? He's like, you never heard of Lifetime? And so when the opportunity presented itself, I came on as the assistant department head, 300,000 square foot building, and just an insanely amount of ancillary services. And so when I say it's the best place to learn the business side of fitness, it really is, because we're selling everything there from metabolic testing to heart rate monitors to their own line of nutritional supplements to obviously personal training. So, a great sale there isn't like a 36 pack of personal training. A great sale there is personal training, a heart rate monitor, a metabolic test, and supplements. And so really, I spent a number of years there. I eventually became the department head there. And then ultimately, my career went more in the route of the business side, because I tell people all the time, as a trainer, you're always faced with this crossroad. And I started as a trainer, and a great trainer, I might add, Carl. But you're always faced with this crossroad where you can continue to try and do 200 sessions per month, which is what I was doing. I was crushing it, right? Or you cannot run yourself into the ground and become more on the management side. And clearly that's what I decided to do for peace of mind and for sanity's sake. And then from there, it just kind of took off. I worked for some of the biggest brands in the world, Equinox, 24-Hour Fitness. And then that's when you really saw the boom of boutique fitness, namely the Barry's boot camps, the Soul Cycles, and then had a great opportunity at F45. And that's where I really learned the boutique side of fitness and wellness, overseeing, thousands of locations, especially when the pandemic hit. And then finally, the opportunity presented itself to come over to the DRIPBaR. And post-pandemic, as you talk to a lot of industry leaders, Carl, fitness will never go away. It's making a big comeback. I don't believe it's ever going to be exactly the same as it was pre-pandemic for a variety of reasons. But the wellness industry, man, it is blown up, right? And so when I looked at what the DRIPBaR was doing, forget the growth was insane. But just the fact that, yes, you have your lifestyle drips predominantly, but I didn't realize there's a lot of chronically ill people that come to use our services. And so that sort of brings me to today. I was fortunate enough to be elevated to the president, and off we go to the races.
Kory, congrats on starting from the bottom, and now we're here, as they say it. And it's amazing how Lifetime and these other brands have really positioned themselves in the big box space, especially in America, whether it be as the real estate play or many others. But congratulations to the DRIPBaR also for bringing your knowledge and expertise over to their team, which is only going to help them grow. Speaking of which, talk to me about the DRIPBaR. How can people get involved? What's the concept? Talk to me about the growth that you guys have seen, because it is exponential, to say the least.
Yeah, one of the things that's great about F45 and my time there is that It was really unique. I think obviously it's not the trendsetter and how boutique fitness got started, but what they did really well is they were really scalable to just not just brick and mortar, right? So they're now on army bases, they're on a cruise ship, they're in a Hilton hotel, right? They're on college campuses. When I looked at the growth of the DRIPBaR, I sort of looked at the size similar to a boutique fitness space. 1,500 square feet is ideal. And I was like, wow, this is really scalable too. And so, yeah, we're growing exponentially in the brick and mortar side of it, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet. But we're in our first gym now in Foxborough, in a gym called the Fit Factory. We're going to be in several more, with a lot more deals in the making. And our plan is, to be in airports, cruise ships, army bases, you name it. That's where we want to be. And so for me, that's really exciting, right? And I will say the other exciting thing about it is my whole life has been competing with other fitness brands. Like if I'm at F45, like I'm competing with Orange Theory, right? If I'm at Lifetime, I'm competing with Equinox. At the DRIPBaR, we run partnerships with everyone in the fitness brand. Like we'll do a pop-up event at an F45. We'll do it at Orange Theory. It's really cool in that way. It's exciting for me, right? And so, go to the DRIPBaR.com. You could always DM me on Instagram or anything like that. And we have a lot of owners in fitness now signing on as owners with the DRIPBaR because they see it as another ancillary revenue source in their overall portfolio.
It's amazing how your competition becomes your partners in the future, isn't it?
It's so true. And I know you deal with a lot of different brands too, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
100%. Let alone when you see, I've had people on the podcast that have very similar paths from you, whether it be Lifetime, 24-hour, or Equinox specifically. And now they're running they're heads of boutique fitness studios and other wellness concepts. Speaking of wellness, I think it is really awesome how the DRIPBaR really focuses on what healthcare could be and not really on sick care. And that's a really awesome thing when we look towards experiencing the DRIPBaR. And I'd love for you to talk to people about what they can expect when coming to DRIPBaR for the first time, but focusing on what healthcare really could be instead of just looking to wellness brands for when you're not feeling your best, but instead to optimally always be feeling your best.
Yeah, again, I got to take you with me because you set the questions up perfectly, right? So the reason why I love it framed that way, this also plays into sales. And what I mean by that is it always used to draw me up the wall in fitness when someone would talk about, like, they'd be really isolated in the conversation they would have with a potential member or a customer. In that, someone says they want to lose 20 pounds and they're like, all right, come Wednesday, right? We have a great workout Wednesday. We're going to do some strength. We're going to do some cardio. Every person's goal should be framed up by talking about someone's program first, right? So what we do with the DRIPBaR, where I think we're headed in terms of wellness, the wellness industry as a whole, is really talking to a customer about their overall wellness program. Sure, you can go and get a drip. Is that going to be life-changing? No, you'll feel great from it. But is that solving the needs of what your overall wellness goals are? And so when we think about the wellness industry, I think it's about really framing it up in terms of overall wellness program. Now, part of that wellness program should be a series of drips potentially. Maybe it's a little bit of red light therapy, increase that energy. And then maybe you're instituting something from the nutritional programming, as well as some workouts, wherever that may be, right? And so when you come to the DRIPBaR, we frame everything up in that way to make sure that we're not just narrow-minded in talking about, hey, just come Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think that's something that maybe you had an influence in when working with F45. Is I personally love that the F45 franchisees, the hundreds of them that I work with, have now implemented wellness and nutrition programs, because it's amazing how I was an Orange Theory member for 3 years. I would crush it in the gym, and then I'm out the door and nobody cares what happens when I leave. And then I take my first F45 class. Shout out to Craig Hobson at Coral Springs West.
Yeah.
It was, hey, this is the great first step, and the DRIPBaR is the great first step. But how do we partner with you when you're thinking of wellness and healthcare and all of these things, that you brand the DRIPBaR as that one-stop shop? Because it goes down to sales, just like you said. When I look and feel my best, I'm irradiating that energy and everybody around me wants it. So I'm a walking billboard of the DRIPBaR.
No, it's so true. I mean, we just brought on a company called Full Script where we're able to now incorporate supplements,
Awesome.
a variety of vetted companies that, again, but it's depending upon that person's goals and what their driving motivation is, which again, for me, it's right up my alley. I mean, I minored in nutrition as well. My major was sports medicine back in the day. And so, yeah, from a medical perspective, from a health and wellness perspective, I mean, what else can you ask for? And the funny part now is, like many others, when I first heard about drips, I always associated it with hangovers, right? But again, the chronically ill, I mean, listen, price points doesn't matter. That's thrown out the window. When you have cancer and you're battling other chronic diseases, people pay attention and they want to take care of themselves. And so that's something we always say is we provide health at the cellular level, but it's true.
Well, I'm going to give my little hack when it comes to the DRIPBaR. If you're going to party your ass off that night, go get a drip beforehand, because that's where you're really going to prepare yourself to not be miserable the next day. And then secondly, go try NAD, because that is one of the coolest things that exists today. If you want to really feel energized, look, and just like inside feel younger, NAD is the way to go.
It's so true. I mean, listen, you hit the nail on the head. I think nowadays, it's not such a radical concept to talk about doing stuff before something happens, right? Whether it's a hangover or in the fitness world, we talk about prehab, right? Like if you're going to go in for knee surgery, like you should be strengthening your knee prior to that. Same holds true for us. I mean, jet setter is a great example of that. Just if you travel a lot, right? You're coming in for a jet setter beforehand, so you feel great while you're on that plane.
Love it. So Kory, taking a transition away from DRIPBaR and really focusing on you and your past in this space, talk to me about the topic, which is your local business hacks that you've used in any of your environments and ways, because I think that any of the roles that you've played speak to our listeners all over the globe. So share some stories that really drove those hacks home.
So there's one that I talk about all the time, and I know for a fact you've heard this many times and you probably cringe, and that is, my entire career, whenever I talked to a customer, to me, the most important question is, what's your goal, right? But it's fascinating as I do hundreds and hundreds of mystery shopping, whether it's another fitness place, whether it's another local drip place, the lack of skill set with the person talking to me from that location or that store or that business. It's fascinating how they can go an entire conversation with me as a customer and not ask me why I'm calling in the first place or what I'm looking to do. What they do is they talk about what they have to sell. And so one of the things I learned a decade ago was just a simple acronym. And the acronym to me is called SUPS. I'll tell you what it means. It's not rocket science at the end of the day, but it's a series of questions that I never forget to ask. Because I think, and I know, one of the reasons why some questions that are really important never get asked is because most salespeople aren't really skilled at sales. I mean, no one goes to school to learn how to sell. There's also that level of anxiety and nervousness, right? Especially when you're young, 20-something-year-old, your boss is having you answer calls or make calls to potential, customers and leads. And so you throw all that in the mix and you're just kind of fumbling around to ask questions. And so what does that mean? It means that the number one thing that's helped me is to remember, for me, just an acronym. The acronym is called SUPS, SUPS. And there will never be a conversation I have with a customer where I'm not methodically walking you through each of these 4 questions. And so the S in SUPS simply stands for specific goal, right? You're never going to get on the phone with Kory where I don't ask you, listen, I know you want to know the price, Carl, but what's your goal, man? What are you looking to do? And so you might say, well, increase energy. And so the next question I would ask you is the U part of the acronym SUPS, which is underlying motivation. So why is that your goal? So you want to increase energy. Why? And you're like, well, I do this amazing podcast, right? I do it all day long and it's phenomenal, but I'm sitting all day. And so, right, that's why my goal is to increase energy. So I'm like, great, right? And so a very important question I would ask after that is the letter P as part of that acronym SUPS, which is past experience, right? So have you ever done, in my case, IV drip therapy in the past? And you might say, yeah. And if you do, I'll say, well, what'd you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Just so I get a good idea of your psyche going into this. And then the final S is, solution. And I save this for the last part because this, again, to my point before, is where everyone goes wrong. We're so quick to talk about what we have and why we're the best business and we offer an amazing service, or in fitness, we're great trainers, right? But you should save that for the end. Gather all the information about a customer first. And once I gather that you want to increase energy because you sit all day and that you've done IV drip therapy in the past and you liked it, that's why you want to do it again, I would then say something like, great, now that I know all that, Carl, let me tell you about where I think your solution can be in coming to us. And then I just give you a recommendation on maybe what that first drip looks like as part of that overall wellness program. That is the number one thing I would beg people to do is somehow, some way, for me, it's an acronym. Remember those questions, never forget them. They're the most important things you always ask on a first conversation.
My head is spinning on 100 other examples that I can provide to you, but I think it's imperative that what happens, if you don't mind, give me an example of a way that you've used this maybe outside of the DRIPBaR and in your personal life, or ways that you really are able to communicate with people by implementing these tools.
Yeah, there's a great, I mean, I use a million analogies, right? And there's a great business leader and the famous business author as well. His name is Simon Sinek. I quote him very often, but I always think about it when I'm doing these types of things. And he always says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's always stuck with me. And so as I travel a lot with work the last 10 years, the problem with me is I'm always hyperanalyzing these little interactions wherever I go. And so there's a story I tell all the time ad nauseum, but you walk into a mall and there's this one kiosk in every mall where you just cringe because you know it is the total opposite of what I'm telling you, right? Building rapport with a customer. It is almost like just walking into the worst used car dealer in America. Can you guess what kiosk I'm talking about? There's a few, but there's one that really sticks out.
Well,
they're real salesy. They just
I'm thinking of the one where they put the cream on your face and swear that you're losing 20 years. And I can't say if I want it or not. It's on my face as I'm walking by.
You're exactly right. So it's specifically Israeli sea salt lotion.
Yes.
Absolutely. And we have not talked prior to this podcast, right?
I promise listeners that was organically out of the hat.
Exactly. I always judge things in sales about how you feel, how it makes you feel, right? And when I'm with a group and I'm teaching, I'll say, what feelings come up when you walk into a car dealership? And it's like anxiety, nervousness, right? Because people are going to project this salesiness on you. Well, when you approach this particular kiosk, you see like two guys or two girls, like they're just grabbing you and like pulling you over. And so what I do, like many others, and you just probably alluded to, is I actually pull out my phone and I literally pretend to talk to someone as I even walk a little bit away from you do like a semicircle. You're not walking straight past it, right? People know what I'm talking about for sure. And I'm a grown man. Like that's Carl, this is crazy that I have to pretend to talk to someone, but that's how bad it is. They don't ask you what you're looking to do. They don't ask you your goal. They don't ask you if you've ever used this product before. They just want to take your hands and you wash your hands. They put the lotion on you. You put it on your face. You put it on, and they just like try to sell you this. And so I always use that as a real life experience because it's a metaphor of what never to do in sales. And so if you can really stay on track with the thought process that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Talk to a customer about why they would want anything from you in the first place. What's your goal? Why is it your goal? If you ever experienced this in the past, then talk about your product, but don't do it right in the beginning. By the way, the lotion might be fantastic, but you've lost me at your experience.
Yeah, I think also it goes back, and I'm going to ask you some of your favorite books, but one of mine for day-to-day is The Four Agreements. And don't make assumptions. And assuming that customer hasn't tried your product before, they have, and they weren't successful, how do you gear this pitch to ultimately set them up for success? Because whether you're a salesperson, you're a trainer, you're a phlebotomist, you're a nurse, anybody that's servicing clients in this space, nobody wants to give you something that's not going to help you. We're all in this space because we genuinely believe in our products. We believe in the results that they drive. And we want to convey that through truthfully understanding you and not be the person that says, what are your goals? And then just goes on to the next question. Listen to those things, adapt what you do and how you do it to fit that person, and you'll be successful, and so will the business.
There's a great I used to do back in the day as it related to active listening. Because I always say these powerful questions we're asking, like, what's your goal? It's a simple question, but, powerful questions to me actually do three things. Number one, that you can plant a seed along the way with a good, powerful question. You can certainly overcome an objection before it even happens. You could also activate the emotional part of the brain, which is responsible for ultimately saying yes to a sale or something or a service. But we think we're listening, we're not. And so I used to pair people up and I would say, okay, this person right here, for 60 seconds, I want you to talk about something you're really passionate about. It could be your family, whatever. This person, what I want you to do is don't listen. Literally don't listen. Like, pull out your phone, text someone, whatever. But while this person is talking, don't listen. And the metaphor for that is, this is actually what we do in almost every sales situation. We think we're listening, but we're just throwing out questions to the customer. We're trying to think of another question to ask again. We're not truly in the moment. So to your point, you're exactly right.
Thanks, Kory. Got to ask you, what are some of your favorite books recently? And
yeah, two come to mind. Start with The Why by Simon Sinek. It really teaches you to stop talking about what you have to sell and start paying attention to more as to why a customer would care. So first and foremost, I'll never get old in talking about that particular book. And then the second one is, which I have up on my shelf here, Shoe Dog. And it's just about the entrepreneurial spirit and the drive of Phil Knight. And funny enough, there's a movie coming out about him, but how he started Nike and just the relentlessness, right? And again, always a metaphor in sales, particularly because you can make 50 calls and only book one appointment. And you can look at that like, wow, all right, cool. I booked an appointment. Or like, man, 49 people said no. Yeah, that's sales. Get used to it. But if you're consistent, you'll have success. And that's the bottom line.
Learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
Kory, what would you say is a common myth when it comes to IV therapy?
Oh, yeah. First of all, number one, that it's just for hangovers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ultimately, if I poll people at, the average person, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, don't they do that for just hangovers? No, chronically ill people use IV therapy a lot. And also, we don't just offer IV therapy. So, and again, a lot of companies do this as well, but specifically at the DRIPBaR, yeah, that's our core offering. But there are these really great ancillary services that also help the body that, if you're afraid of a needle, which many Americans are, we have infrared sauna, red light therapy, halo therapy, which is salt therapy. I mean, you don't just need IV drip therapy, right? And then the other myth is that you alluded to a great point earlier, which is like, you should only do it once something happens, right? Which is not the case, right? Yeah, part of your wellness program is to take the active steps before something happens. And so IV drip therapy is a great way to do that.
Awesome. And one of the ways that I use the DRIPBaR is for my psoriasis. It's got so many modalities to help me reduce it. It's done amazing. So just another myth when it comes to these things. I would say, Kory, when we talk about your career and it being so vast in these spaces, what would you say is the number one lesson that you learned either early on or yesterday that really, really impacted or is making an impact today in your life?
Yeah, two things. One is ultimately seek out a mentor. I mean, it's so cheesy to say, but when I started at Lifetime, unfortunately, I was way too cocky and I was in my own way, right? And it took a lot for me to learn that although I'm doing $20,000 a month, my team is doing $4,000 a month. That does not make me a good coach. And so I sought out mentors in the past, and those mentors could be, they don't even necessarily have to be in the same industry as you, but it really helps to understand what are they doing that has worked for them and how can I adapt that myself. I don't need to do it exactly the same way. Then the second thing is always be consistent, right? And so you need your whatever plan or strategy that you have, you can't do it one day and have it work. I'll give you a stupid, simple example. In fitness, we tell trainers to set up a table all the time, right? Have the clipboard there. Let's sign up for a free session. And they'll go and they'll work the table for an hour because they don't have a client, right? And they'll come back and they'll say, man, I got no people were interested. And in their minds, they'll view that as not successful. And anytime then we tell them to run a table, they'll view it as like, why? We weren't successful in the past. But when you run a table for 1 hour for 5 days in a row, you're going to get people that are interested and that actually sign up. And so when you take on some best practices from a mentor, when you learn to be consistent throughout your career, you by default, you're going to be successful.
Love that. And if you don't know where to find your mentor, look to the people that you listen to, that you look up to, that are in your friend circle, ask questions, because it's super imperative.
And I would also say, listen to this podcast, because you do have some great mentors on here. A lot of my former colleagues and friends have been on the podcast, and it's great. So let's throw that one in there too.
Thanks, Kory. When we talk about entrepreneurship, so obviously it comes in many ways, shapes, and forms. When we speak about you specifically, what would you say is your number one productivity hack when it comes to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, first of all, if you're going to enter entrepreneurship, which I certainly did at an early age, fun fact, I designed a fitness product. I was on QVC, wasn't that successful in the time slot I was in, as well as a potential spot on Shark Tank, although we never made it. You need to be able to fail fast. So if you want to be productive as an entrepreneur, you need to learn to fail fast. Now, my friend Jason told me this years ago, so I can't take credit for the term, but it's so true, right? How many times have you seen people get down on themselves and harp on how they failed maybe the day before or the year before? You got to fail fast. And one thing I will say is you move up the ranks in any business and you ultimately get to maybe it's a manager or a director or the C-suite even, right? You got to take risks and you got to take chances, and they're not all going to pan out. I think that's what separates the successful people from the people that aren't willing to take risks. And why, I mean, listen, if you look at any famous entrepreneur out there, whether it's Elon Musk to Simon Sinek to whoever, right? They've all failed at some level, right? And so it just is what it is. And so you just got to learn from it and move on.
Yeah, and I think you can apply that setting to hiring, slow to hire, quick to fire. And if somebody's screaming that they don't deserve my time or this doesn't deserve my time, don't try to make it work.
Absolutely. So much energy is spent in that realm. And it's like, you got to move on. Come on.
Yeah, for real. Kory, on a personal level, I personally think you're a super successful guy. So I'm curious, what's your morning routine look like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like yours, 5 a.m., wake up, 5:30 at the gym. And I'll go to my local F45. I'll go to the Planet Fitness if I want to just get in and out. By 6:30, I'm done. So 6:30, I want to have my workout in. 6:30, I'm done. To have my protein shake at about 8. Get my son ready for the bus. That's probably the biggest struggle. The easy part is getting to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. But then it's really understanding what my day looks like. Right? I talk to a lot of owners. Every hour is a different owner at the DRIPBaR. It's been like that even with my F45 days. And it's just learning empathy. It's probably a big thing that I need to check myself every day. It's easy for you and me, Carl, to talk about like, you need to do this. Because we've done it, frankly, a million times. It's harder to take a step back and go, yeah, like it's easy for me to say that. I'm not in the DRIPBaR right now, or I'm not in an F45, or I'm not in a Lifetime, right? So it's making sure that an owner or people in an owner's location, so their staff members, understand why I'm telling them to do that. And it always comes back to people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. If you want someone to take your advice, you better tell them why you're telling them that, not just the what and the how. And so that's a typical day for me. But I will say I like to unwind like everyone with a little Netflix, a little HBO Max, a little ESPN. That's later at night.
Awesome. And what's your current show that you're watching?
Oh, come on. The Last of Us.
Awesome. You say that like I watch TV. I don't, but.
Yeah. And the one before that, White Lotus, like everyone.
Awesome.
Carl, I'm going to have to sell you on the idea that you need to watch those 2 shows.
You already did.
All right. There you go.
I'll watch them. Kory, I got time for one more story. I'm going to focus it on your role today at the DRIPBaR, and tell me something that happened in the first couple of weeks of you being president.
Oh, I'll limit it to one. One of the number one things that I always love to do is, we talked about it before, mystery shop, right? But what owners don't realize is I'm calling their stores. Like, they expect that we have a one-on-one meeting on a Wednesday at 1:00. And so you get to talk to Kory on Wednesday at 1, and they show up for that call and they're all excited. And sometimes we're helping them on sales or operations or whatever it is. But in that first week, I called a number of owners, and the owner doesn't necessarily answer the phone, but really what I was doing was checking on their sales staff, right? The person that's answering the call. And then what we would do is I would write all my notes down. And then when I got on the call, which is my normal weekly call with the owner, they would be really surprised to hear either how bad or how good those conversations were. And very often, Carl, they're not even aware of their own, like, they think they know, they think they have a rock star at their front desk, or, by the way, we have a lot of rock stars, or they think that they're lacking something at the front desk. And so by me actually making those calls, especially as the new president, was fascinating to them. And so what it taught them is that, hey, let's take a step back. Let's learn to mystery shop themselves. I tell owners all the time, you should be mystery shopping your own store once a month and someone else once a month, because you only know what you know. And if you don't know how your local competitor, if you've never called them, or if you never checked on your recent new hire at your front desk, you're really missing out. And so I will always continue to do that because it's so fun.
I love that. Something that Referrizer Platinum team does when you onboard with us, we call the 10 businesses like you around you and record their calls, send it to you, and show you how your calls are typically garbage. And once in a while, when we do get that rarity that knocks it out the park, we pamper them like no other.
Isn't it like for every 10 times you do that, though, you only get one that knocks it out of the park? It's crazy that still happens.
I think it's less than that, because by the time typically people are looking at an automated marketing solution, they've already blown through way too many things, whether it be front desk staff, salespeople, outside marketers, the marketing company that they were forced into.
Oh, yeah.
And it's sad that they get to the point where it's like, all right, I'm either getting with the right partner, or I'm closing my doors. So we can we do make a big impact. And then showing them, just like you guys, for anybody listening that owns a franchise or their own business, call your competition. You have no clue what these people are doing that's working. And you might think it's their brand, you might think it's their marketing, or they just have some superstar on the phone and they're driving results.
It's also important that companies like yourself with Referrizer, who I know very well, and they do such a great job, it's so true. But even my time at F45, like, a human can't do everything. And people view automation, for example, right, as like, yeah, but I want to call them. No, you could still call them right away. In fact, you should call a lead right away, right? But it takes 8 to 12 times to even get a hold of a lead. So when you have that mindset, it's like, are you going to remember to do 12 calls to someone? Right. And so companies like yourself is so imperative nowadays, because it takes away from human error. People get lost in a store or a fitness business, things come up. And so when you have that back end information, it's so important. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Thanks, Kory. Kory, I can thank you enough from our listeners all over the globe and the DRIPBaR for scooping you up. And we're beyond excited over here at Referrizer to follow you personally and the brand. And I want to thank you for sharing some personal stories and giving us some insights into your life.
Thanks. Great job as always. I'm looking forward to hearing some future episodes. Keep up the great work, of course.
We'll see you hackers on the next week's episode. That's it for today. Thanks, Kory. Thank you so much. That's it for this week's episode. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure to head over to our site, local-business-hacks.com, to check out the show notes and send me questions or ideas for future episodes. If you want to grow your business, just like the people you've heard from here, follow Local Business Hacks Podcast and tune in for new tips, tricks, and tactics. Until next time, thanks for listening and keep hacking.